Sodom and Gomorrah. What really happened that night? An untold Bible story special. What if the most infamous cities in history, synonymous with sin and divine retribution, were not just destroyed, but were wiped from existence as a terrifying warning to all of humanity? What if the story of Sodom and Gomorrah is not just a tale of fire and brimstone, but a chilling account of celestial intervention, a desperate rescue, and a mystery that echoes from the ancient world into our own? This is the untold story of that fateful night, a journey not into a simple moral fable, but into a cataclysm that erased cities from the map and left behind a legacy of salt and fire. Part 1. The Sin and Corruption of Sodom. The story begins not in the heavens, but on a lush, well-watered plain that was said to be like the garden of the Lord. Here, nestled in the fertile Jordan Valley, stood the twin cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Genesis describes them as prosperous and powerful, hubs of trade and wealth. But beneath this veneer of success, a deep-seated corruption was festering. The Bible paints a stark picture. The cry against Sodom and Gomorrah was great, and their sin was very grievous. While often associated with a single type of transgression, the scriptures suggest a far deeper rot. The prophet Ezekiel later clarifies that the sins of Sodom were not just carnal, but were rooted in arrogance, abundance of food, and prosperous ease. Yet they did not aid the poor and needy. They were haughty and committed abominations before God. This was a society that had become so utterly consumed by its own selfishness, cruelty, and pride that its very existence had become an affront to divine justice. It was a culture where hospitality was met with hostility, where the vulnerable were preyed upon, and where the cries of the oppressed went unheard by men, but reached the very ears of God in heaven. The stage was set for a judgment of unprecedented scale, an intervention that would serve as an eternal reminder of the consequences of abandoning righteousness. Part 2. The Angels and Lot's Warning. Into this heart of darkness, two strangers arrived as dusk began to fall. The book of Genesis describes them as men, but they were more than that. They were celestial messengers, angels sent on a mission of reconnaissance and, if necessary, deliverance. They walked into the city square of Sodom, a place teeming with the city's depraved intentions. Only one man, Lot, the nephew of the patriarch Abraham, recognized the sanctity of these visitors. Sitting at the city gate, he rose to meet them, bowing with his face to the ground and insisting they accept the sanctuary of his home, knowing the dangers that lurked in the city's streets after dark. His fears were quickly realized. Before the travelers could even lie down to rest, Lot's house was surrounded. It was not a small mob, but the men of the city, both young and old, all the people from every quarter. They pounded on his door, their voices dripping with menace, demanding that Lot bring out his guests so that they could know them. The Hebrew word used here implies a brutal violation, a complete disregard for the sacred laws of hospitality and human dignity. In a desperate and frankly shocking attempt to protect his divine guests, Lot offered his own two virgin daughters to the mob instead, pleading with them not to commit such a great evil against the men under his roof. But the mob, blinded by their wickedness, refused. They turned on Lot himself, threatening to do worse to him than to his guests as they surged forward to break down the door. It was at this critical moment that the divine nature of the visitors was revealed. They pulled Lot back into the safety of the house, struck the men outside with a blinding light, and left them groping helplessly in the dark, their evil intentions thwarted by a power they could not comprehend. Part 3. The Fire that Fell from Heaven. With the immediate threat neutralized, the angels delivered their terrifying message. "Hurry," they commanded Lot. "Get your family and flee this place, for we are about to destroy it." The outcry against its people has become so great before the Lord that he has sent us to destroy it. The divine verdict had been passed. The time for mercy had run out. The hour of judgment was at hand. Lot raced to his sons-in-law, who were pledged to marry his daughters, and relayed the urgent, catastrophic warning. But they laughed. To them, Lot seemed to be joking. They were so entrenched in the city's corrupt reality, so blind to the spiritual peril they were in, that the idea of imminent destruction was simply unbelievable. As the dawn broke, the angels' patience wore thin. With Lot still hesitating, torn between escape and the life he had built, the celestial beings seized him, his wife, and his 2 daughters by the hand. The scripture emphasizes that, the Lord being merciful to him, they were forcibly dragged from the city's doomed limits. Once outside, the final command was given: escape for your life. Do not look back or stop anywhere in the plain. Escape to the hills, lest you be swept away. Then, as the sun rose over the earth, the heavens themselves tore open. The Lord rained down sulfur and fire from the sky, a terrifying supernatural storm of divine wrath. It wasn't a volcanic eruption or a natural disaster. The Bible describes it as a direct, targeted act from God. A torrent of burning destruction fell not just on Sodom, but on Gomorrah and all the cities of the plain, consuming everything: the buildings, the people, and even the vegetation that grew from the ground. In a moment, the once thriving valley was transformed into a smoking, desolate wasteland, a scene of absolute and total annihilation. Part 4: Lot's escape and the tragic transformation. As the fiery cataclysm consumed the cities behind them, Lot and his 2 daughters fled for their lives, their hearts pounding with terror and grief. The angel's warning echoed in their minds: do not look back. This was not just a practical instruction to hasten their escape. It was a profound spiritual command. To look back was to long for the life they had left behind, to show a lingering attachment to the world of sin that was being purged from the face of the earth. It was a test of their commitment to the new life they had been mercifully granted. But for Lot's wife, the temptation was too great. Whether it was out of love for the home she had lost, concern for the sons-in-law who had perished, or a simple, fatal curiosity, she disobeyed. She turned and looked back at the inferno. In that instant, divine judgment was swift and bizarre. The Bible states she became a pillar of salt. This was not a slow process, but an immediate, horrifying transformation. She was frozen in her moment of disobedience, becoming a permanent crystalline monument to the danger of a divided heart. Her fate stands as one of the most chilling warnings in all of Scripture, a stark reminder that salvation requires a complete turning away from the past. Lot and his daughters, having witnessed this final tragedy, did not dare to look back. They pressed on, reaching the safety of the small town of Zoar, and later the mountains, as the sole human survivors of the apocalypse that had wiped their world away. Part 5: The Legacy and Mystery of Sodom. In the morning, Abraham, who had pleaded with God to spare the city for the sake of the righteous, looked out toward the plain. Where there had once been bustling cities, he saw only thick smoke rising from the land, like the smoke of a furnace. The cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were gone, erased from the landscape and from history, leaving only a legend and a mystery that endures to this day. For centuries, explorers and archaeologists have searched for the physical remains of these lost cities, drawn to the desolate shores of the Dead Sea, a body of water so saline that no life can survive in it, a fitting tomb for the cities of the plain. Some scholars point to archaeological sites like Bab-ed-Dra and Numera, ancient Bronze Age towns that show evidence of sudden abandonment and destruction by fire. Others propose a more cataclysmic natural event, such as an asteroid airburst, that could have superheated the landscape and released fiery destruction consistent with the biblical account. But whether the ruins are buried beneath the salty waters or lost forever to the sands of time, the true legacy of Sodom and Gomorrah is not archaeological, but theological. Their story has become the ultimate symbol of divine judgment against sin and a powerful testament to God's mercy in saving the few who are righteous. It is a terrifying cautionary tale etched into the memory of humanity, a narrative of a night when fire fell from heaven and a warning that echoes through the ages, that pride, corruption, and inhumanity have a cost, and that some accounts are settled not with ink, but with fire.